One of the things that we didn't have a chance to really get into very much, though I think you brought it up, and you also, Brian, touched on it, has to do with sexuality and issues of both sex education and sexual health overall. And so what is your sense, first of all, of what happens in school? How good is it? Second is, what are the assumptions? I mean, from my perspective, it all assumes heterosexuality, and there's anyone who has any other sexual orientation is left out in the cold, but that may not be true anymore. So why don't you pick up and also talk a little bit more, and you, Natalie, were talking about this a bit on stage, about ways of reaching young people in different kinds of ways that have happened. So let me open it up and jump in.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think when I was in high school, 4 or 5 years ago, it definitely assumed heterosexuality, and sex was always treated as a bad thing. It was always a negative, you're going to get an STI or you get pregnant. There was never any discussion on the positive aspects of sexuality, the positive aspects of sex. It was always just this really reinforcing a negative message, and it didn't really work. It just kind of made me think, okay, sex is bad, and that was the only message I ever got.
Well, I think my views on it. I think one of the hard things for me to deal with is my parents are from Sierra Leone, so they're kind of old-fashioned. So they're not open to same-sex, gay or lesbian. They're not open to that. So, but with me growing up in a different generation, I'm not that, but I'm open to it. I don't have any problems with people who have same sex or lesbian, like that. So that's one of the hard things I have to do with, because
sort of that tension between yourself and your parents in terms of the worldview.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand it because that's the way they were raised, and I'm raised differently, and I grew up in a different time. So
I think there's also, not only with sexual health, but also sexual assault, there's a lot of assumptions that the assaulter or the victim is the woman, and then the person assaulting the person is the man. Like, who hurt you? What did he do? And sometimes there's a lot of same-sex, assault issues where I feel like it's very hard for same-sex couples to say stuff like that, because it's always assumed that it's the male that does that.
One of the questions that a few people raised, and it is, I think, linked to some of what we were just talking about, relates to the norms around sexual behaviors today. And I think that a lot of adults assume that we know the norms. We see a snippet on MTV, or we listen to hip hop, and we say, oh, these are the norms. Among your friends, among the people you know and have grown up with, what are the expectations around behaviors, particularly around sexual behaviors? What are the things people tell each other?
I think one of the negatives of that is some people aren't comfortable with some people's sexual behaviors. And when one is not comfortable, they either make rumors or they spread it around the school. So that's one of the negatives of that I can think of, that
I think some of the assumptions are that people our age are definitely engaging in sexual behaviors, and I think that assumption kind of projects itself onto us and then makes people think, oh, if I'm 17 and I haven't lost my virginity yet, there's something wrong with me. So I think we see the messages on MTV or other things about kids, about teenagers having sex constantly, and we think if we're not doing that, then there's something wrong with us. Like, we should be having sex, we should be engaging in sexual behaviors.
Especially being a black male, based on my experiences, I think the stigma is that we're sexually active, and some aren't sensitive to sex, and some have different beliefs. I think the stigma is that we're all for sex, and our sexual behaviors are not, they're not good. And that's a problem that I have, you know. Some people have different views, but the stigma is that we're sexually active and that we don't think differently. Like, that's a problem I have.
I think a lot of our sexual behaviors get skewed when alcohol is involved. And I know a lot of people my age, you know, that go out to parties and stuff like that engage in sexual behaviors when alcohol is involved. And I think that's a huge problem because it affects their judgment, and that's when, you know, sexual health is an issue, when you don't know what you're doing, and you know, the next day you might not think that, you know, anything is wrong, but then later find out that, you know, there is a problem.
One of the problems that I know I face is that within my culture, like, I'm Hispanic and Arab, we don't talk about sex. My mom just sends me to school assuming that they're gonna teach me what sex is and how to be safe and what would be good behavior. But then we don't really talk about it in school either. So the thing that I'm left with is the media. And if I didn't have good judgment, I feel like, because the way media is portrayed a lot of the times, like girls wearing skimpy skirts or like acting way out of line, or men just being all over women, I feel like I could be that, but because of my parents and how I was raised, I won't do that. But sometimes a lot of people aren't close to their parents, so that's one of the problems I face with.
I want to go back to something totally different topic that we were talking about during the meeting, and that relates to stress. And a few people asked about the role of having a job in high school. And a lot of kids, the majority of kids, do some kind of work for money, not everyone, many. And on the one hand, there's the argument, this teaches responsibility, and the teacher is, you know, adult, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, it's like one more thing on top of it. Talk about, from your perspectives, the place of a job during the school year while you're in school, particularly in high school.
Having a job is stressful, you know, especially with me, like I said before, football and the rigors of the season. And, you know, it's not just from a certain month, it's the whole year round. You know, you have off season, and you're only trying to make yourself better. On top of that, is school, you know. Parents, they're always pushing you to do better, you know. And to have a job, it just makes everything worse. But the thing that you get out of that is money, and you gain experience, and you learn how to treat certain situations effectively. You know, that's the positive of it. But the negative is time consuming. I mean, when you get to college, there's no mom and dad to tell you to do this at a certain time. You know, so having a job, it helps you, because when you get to college, you already know how to, you know, manage your time. You know.
The time management is a very, very difficult thing in college, and you know, your hours for sleep get just totally messed up when, you know, you're alone and you have to kind of, you know, work with what you have and not, you know, your parents telling you what to do all the time. So I think it is very stressful, because I know a lot of people that are working, but they're not working to pay for just their college, they're working to help their parents out. And that's really stressful on them, because they have, on top of school, they have their internships and then their jobs, and then, you know, they're trying to, you know, eat healthy and work out, but that's not their top priority, because they have other things to worry about, like, you know, getting money for not only them, but supporting their family.
One of the areas where a number of people in the audience have interest and questions relates to bullying. And I would imagine that by the time you get to college, bullying is not a non-issue, but is a smaller issue. But I'd be interested in whether that's true. And I'd also be interested in what, from your perspectives, could be done differently. In supporting kids. And let me just also say that my assumption, based on research, is that for guys and girls, bullying is different. From guys, it's physical, much more and physical threatening. Girls, it's nonverbal, it's ostracizing, it's you come sit at the table and the rest of the table gets up and moves, that kind of stuff. So talk about the experiences of it and what could be done.
Well, I think one of the main problems is teacher intervention. I definitely think a lot of times teachers don't intervene when they see something happening. From personal experience, I mean, I've had times when I was in high school where I was being openly bullied or teased, and it was obviously visible, and a teacher would just walk by. I mean, they would say nothing, they might stop and look and just kind of walk away, or maybe kind of gesture to the student and say, all right, please stop doing that, but there was never really any action taken on it. Even in the classroom, someone might say something, like a snide remark, and the teacher would just kind of say, that's enough, but there was never really any severe consequences. So I think teachers need to go through more training to really understand how much of an issue bullying really is.
In my experiences, recently, about a couple weeks ago, there's this new student at our school, and he's of Senegalese descent. And my parents being from Africa, I kind of bonded with him, But based on what I saw in the school that I go to is very diverse, but they would make fun of him, because you have to look at it from his point of view. He's not used to this school, he's from a whole different world. And maybe the way he dresses or how he tries to fit in the school, people don't understand it. And I was walking into a basketball court and I saw him with no shoes on. He went to go change and he took his shoes. And it's those type of things that I'm furious with, is because just because you don't understand a certain person does not mean you have to bully, And again, with what he was talking about, teachers see that. Teachers aren't blind, I guarantee you, if you skip school, they'll suspend you. But if you bully somebody, they'll walk away. They're not authoritative in that way, bullying. It's something that bothers me.
Mm.
I feel like there's a lot of different kinds of bullying that makes it very hard for teachers to know when to stop or when to intervene. I intern at affordable housing, and there's children there that get bullied all the time. And the teens there, I don't see it as much, but for the children that are K through 5, I see constantly the older kids making fun of the younger ones with teasing and physical, nonverbal, verbal. It's always there. I always see it, but it's really hard for me to assess one where it's physical and you can automatically get in trouble for that. But how do you do nonverbal? Like, if I don't sometimes I wish that I could get educated a little bit better to help those kids, because when I see it, it bothers me, but I don't know how I could help them without it being said. Nothing's being said. Maybe it's, a hands gesture or putting stuff in their backpack and, the kid not knowing until later. It's just like those little things. I want to do something, but I'm trying to run a bullying workshop and I see it all the time. So it's like, how can I educate these kids when I want to know more about how I can help them with the verbal and nonverbal side of bullying?
From your guys' perspective, being in college now, how did these behaviors, how are they different than when you were in middle school or high school?
I think going back to what you were saying, the difference between the violence and the ostracizing, I feel like when you get to college, the violence part, for the most part, kind of tapers off, but it's much more of the mental kind of and like the psychological attacks, like no longer speaking to somebody and, just kind of, it's very small, like snide remarks, and I think like we were talking, like Facebook and stuff like that. I mean, even through that, people like, I mean, it's very small things, like, messaging somebody, writing a comment on someone's wall. They're very small things, but after a while they add up, and they can really take an emotional toll on a person.
Any last things that you all say? Oh, I wish I said that. And if you haven't, that means it's successful. You said the things that you really wanted to say.
Mine would be for people to be a little bit more open-minded to certain situations that you see in life. For example, bullying, the example I gave you. It's things like that that makes you really wonder. I mean, these are American-born kids, and in America, they teach you to be respectful, and that's not being respectful, And just be open-minded, because you never know when you're gonna need that person who wants you bullied, And I've been in that situation before, and it's tough.
Yeah. I hear in your message, both from the adult side, teaching tolerance, and from all of our sides, celebrating diversity. Whether diversity is ethnic, whether it's linguistic, whether it's dress, whether it's sexual orientation, whatever, to celebrate diversity and not be so threatened by someone who looks different, talks different, acts different than you. And it's both tough to do and critically important, particularly in a place like this country, where we're a country of immigrants. We are a country that is profoundly diverse, and it's our strength. But like I think you were saying, Ray, as long as we label people, and as long as your identity is based on where you're from, not who are you, that we're stuck. Again, thanks. This has been terrific.